Thank you very much. That was a really nice introduction. It's so much nicer when someone else says all of that. And I am so grateful to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It's always a real privilege and pleasure to come and meet other groups of people and have discussions and offer what my passion is. My passion really is embodiment and somatics, and how mindfulness pertains to the body, that the body isn't just simply a vehicle for cognition to entertain us, but in fact is our cognition, an embodied type of cognition and understanding. So tonight what I would like to offer is this idea of being able to tap into our stress response in our nervous system and utilize it as a way to come back to feeling resourced and or calm, if that's helpful for you. So would we like to start with a bit of an opening meditation practice, perhaps? Yeah. Please know that everything's an invitation and nothing is a demand. If it doesn't feel right for you, no is celebrated. If I offer a cue that doesn't feel like it lands in your body or your mind, you're invited just to set it aside and hold on to what works best for you. So let's kind of drop in just a little bit. You're invited to begin to notice the chair underneath you. You might get a sense of yourself seated on the chair. And you might notice the chair holding your back. And is it available or helpful for you to rest just a little more upon the chair? Can you really allow the chair to support your body? The chair is neutral. It is not judging your posture. It's not judging your breathing. It's simply there to support you. How does it feel to receive the support of the chair? Even just 5% more. Under your chair is the floor, and under that the earth. Taking some time to notice your feet touching the ground, touching the earth. And beginning to notice what might be happening within your body and within your mind as you feel the chair and the earth. Outside of these walls, we hear the voices and noises of children skating on ice. Allowing yourself to notice that outside of the walls are some children enjoying the ice. Noticing the inside of the walls. And perhaps noticing that you might be able to sense where the door is that you came in without even needing to look at it. Notice that you might be able to sense the walls behind you and in front of you. And even the ceiling above you. And even with all of the chairs and the people in this space, the thing that this room contains the most of is air. What would it feel like to begin to notice your breathing in this room? Noticing your inhale, slightly cool. And then noticing your exhale, maybe a little warmer. Is there a way to enjoy your breathing? Without needing to tell yourself if you're a good breather or a bad breather. Simply enjoying a breath in and a long, slow breath out. Noticing if anything's beginning to change in your mind or your body. And if so, what's changing for you? Feeling the chair underneath you and the ground beneath your feet. If your mind is busy and would like something to do, the next time you breathe in, you might repeat to yourself with your inner voice, I am home. And as you breathe out, you might say with your inner voice, and I smile. Breathing in, you might repeat to yourself, I am home in my body. And as you breathe out, you might repeat, and I smile. Feeling the chair supporting your body and the ground supporting the chair. Hearing the children outside. You're invited to begin to very slowly come back to this room and this time and this space. Nice and slow. And as you come back, you might wish to wiggle or move your feet or invite a little movement into your body. Take your time coming back. Welcome. It really feels like we're all here now. What's different now compared to when you parked your car for you? Do you feel the same as when you pulled up to this moment? Yeah, and have you noticed, for some of you, something might have changed in your awareness, in your breath, or even in your body? Oh, we might have someone else joining us. Yay. Hi, come on in. Hi, welcome. If something's changed for you in your body or your mind or your emotions, take some time to notice that right now. Give yourself the opportunity to really begin to orient, to shift or change, especially if it feels like it's helpful for you. You might even list it to yourself internally if your mind loves to think and talk. We have a tremendous amount of pathway in our brains and in our bodies oriented towards sympathetic nervous system responses. And what are those? Flight, fight, freeze, shut down, collapse. My work is done for me nowadays because a number of years ago, a lot of people hadn't heard of fight, flight, or freeze. And I'm finding more and more now people, that's a part of the common vernacular, seem to hit a tipping point socially. But if you don't know what that means, don't worry, I'll get to it. That's what we're all about tonight. We have a tremendous amount of internal pathway through our nervous system, our central nervous system, through our spine, our vagal nervous system, that reaches all the way through our body, touches our organs, touches our skin, sends messages back to our brain, that is oriented towards survival responses. It's really the gift of our ancestors, is that we could run away when things were dangerous, or we could stand and fight, or we could hide. We don't have a lot of pathway oriented or built out towards pleasure, rest, or safety. It just wasn't helpful for our ancestors. We didn't have that built in our evolutionary phylogenetic chain. So when things start to feel more settled, more supported, more aware, it's really helpful to take your time with that and notice it so you can build out more pathway to get back there easier, which is what we're doing in mindfulness and meditation practices. We're kind of building a positivity bias as opposed to a negativity bias. And I put quotes around that because I'm not always a big fan of the words negative and positive, negative being bad or something. And that's what we'll explore a little bit tonight, is how our nervous system through our body is oriented towards survival, which can feel like stress and or trauma states for some of us. So I'm going to ask everybody a little bit of a question, and you can put your hand up or not. It's entirely up to you. Nothing's a demand here. It's just a suggestion. And I'm going to be a little bit generalized because I think I'm just going to boil it down to like there's two types of people in the room. There's way more than two types of people in the room. But I'm going to boil it down just for simplicity's sake to two types of people in the room. I imagine that there's people in the room who right now during this time are more oriented towards turning the news off in order to feel settled and maybe safer. I also think there's probably some of us in the room who are more oriented to attending to the news, listening to it, listening to podcasts and reports, and that helps us feel safer. So if you're someone who needs to have the news off these days in order to feel rested and safe, would you raise your hand for me now if you felt like participating in that? Okay, great, thank you so much. And if you're someone else in the room who actually needs to attend to the news to some degree in order to feel safe, would you like to raise your hand for me? Me too. Oh, there's a few of us here who need that. Yeah. So one's not better than the other. It all depends on your stress state. And tonight we're going to play with this idea of riding the waves of stress through our bodies and understanding what our body's requesting through gentle movement and mindfulness. I was thinking and reflecting on when we planned to do this talk, what month that was. I think it was November, maybe October. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, I wonder what the world might look like by the end of February. And I was really hoping for the best. Things maybe took a different turn. But I feel like it serves us to sort of collectively recognize that we're in a moment of some pretty untold stress. And that some of us might have entered into this time in history already pretty stressed out. So it might feel dialed up a little bit more. There's ways to meet stress in our system because it's trying to do something for us until it starts to feel like too much. Oh, I was moving somewhere with that, and then it just like blipped right out of my head. It's okay, it'll come back to me. So what I'd like to introduce tonight is starting to tune in and notice how our bodies tell us we're feeling stressed and what we can do about it, especially depending on how we orient with information, as opposed to feeling like stress is bad and I need to push it down or reroute it or de-stress right away. In fact, I'd like to introduce to everybody tonight that your body, your nervous system, already knows how to come back to something more whole and organized. That's the word I like to use for it, for you, given the right opportunity and the right amount of time. That when we're working with somatics, or the nervous system in the body, we're not always trying to relax. We're trying to listen and meet the state in the system with presence and give it a little bit of time to tell us what it needs. And then notice if there's a shift or a change afterwards. How does that sound? So far, you're like, well, we'll see. I like to relax, Stacey. I do too. Sometimes when we interrupt nervous system patterns, especially of fight, flight, or sympathetic, what we end up doing is actually cutting off the body's natural ability to discharge adrenaline and cortisol. So sometimes what I like to invite people to do is actually trust where your body is trying to take you in small, careful ways through movement. It came back to me, the thought. Just wait it out. The brain will offer it back up again, like a little flower. When we're talking about stress, we might start to talk about how there's different kinds of stress. And if I'm generalizing into two groups again, I'm going to talk about eustress and distress. Eustress is the kind of stress that allows us to feel victorious, that allows us to feel strong, that allows us to feel resilient. In fact, we're under a certain amount of stress from the moment we're born. Just living on a gravitational force of this planet creates a type of stress in the body that strengthens our bones. That we have to build muscle to stand upright and not be horizontal and pulled down by gravity. That's a type of eustress. Stress that actually allows us to live our life and move forward. Now there's distress. Distress is when there's too much load into the nervous system, into the body, into our daily life, and it's overwhelming us now. It's starting to short out our nervous system. It's starting to stress our digestive system. It's starting to interrupt our sleep, our endocrine system, our cardiovascular system. And now the body is overloaded with just trying to manage survival as opposed to thrive. That differentiation in stress even shows up in our sweat. For some people, there's a different smell to distress perspiration than there is to just eustress perspiration. Maybe some of us in the room have even noticed that at stressful times in our life, our perspiration smells different. So our body's always responding and reflecting our internal stress state. And it's usually asking for something. There's a message to it. How's that sound so far, everybody? Yeah, so we're all like, yeah, stress is a real natural thing. Some stress is helpful, and then it's not. So let's do a little bit of a movement practice if you're willing to do it. No is always celebrated. And we're just going to make a movement with our hands, like a wave. Some of the considerations with somatic practice is that it's slow. If anything hurts, we stop. We've all learned through enough pain by this point. We don't have to hurt ourselves anymore. And we're going to do it nice and slow so our brain can really catch what our body's doing. So if you wanted to do this movement, you might bring your hands to one side. And we're going to inhale. And then exhale. Good, come back again. We're going to inhale up. And then exhale down. Again, if you want, inhale up. Exhale down. And now do this movement just one or two more times at the pace of your breathing. Let your breath guide your hands. Let your inhale move your hands up. Let your exhale take your hands down. Good, final time. Yeah, some of the movement in the room is getting really fluid here. Yeah, just really feeling that in your system. And then the moment you're starting to feel tired, you're invited to rest your hands. Oh, yeah, lots of energy in them tonight. When your hands come to rest, you might feel the chair underneath you again. Resourcing yourself into something that feels stable and neutral. We design chairs and furniture to support our body. And frequently, if we're in a distressed state, we'll sort of be lifted off of the chair in some way. Allow the chair to support you. When we were doing this movement of a wave and you were breathing in, you are activating and interfacing with your sympathetic nervous system, which is a little adrenaline, a little charge, a little lift. And as you were exhaling and coming down the other side of this wave, you are interfacing, utilizing, and encouraging your parasympathetic nervous system, or your rest and digest nervous system. So sympathetic is fight and flight. Exhale comes down into rest and digest. An inhale instantaneously lifts your body up. And an exhale brings your breath all the way back down into rest and digest. Just frequently why there's a cueing to extend your exhalation, take a longer, deeper breath. But there's nothing wrong with being able to notice when things begin to lift in the nervous system and how the body comes to settle. Because what stress likes to do to us is this. And none of us want to live like this, into a crash. We're looking to ride the waves of the moment, especially now. So take a little moment here and ask yourself, do you think that you live in fight, flight, sympathetic nervous system charge? And what does that mean? Flight is one response. Fight is actually a whole separate somatic response. But what does that really mean when we're talking about that? Most people will say, well, it's because I'm stressed. It's a stress response. But it's something your body is doing. When we internally, even unconsciously or consciously orient to threat, when we feel like there's a threat inside of the body, outside of the body, our system has a few different ways to help us through the stress state. And the first way that it's going to help us try to override stress is to run away. Something feels dangerous. That news story felt really dangerous to me. I'm going to run away. What does running feel like in the body? Tension in the legs, a lift to the spine, and your adrenal glands that sit on top of your kidneys back here, to me, they look like little water guns, and they're going squirt, 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 adrenaline, 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 cortisol. And not because they're trying to do anything bad. They're trying to get you out of a situation. They're trying to help you run away. If we can't run away, or if running away isn't available to us, the next response is fight. And fight response is when the body braces and tightens, the fists go tight, the legs go tight. Sometimes there's a bit of an arch to the spine, the eyes tighten up, and we start to prepare for attack. No one's good at dealing with that one, myself included. We've all been socialized out of fight as being a productive force in the body, but it is. It's highly clarifying. It's about boundaries more normally. When fight isn't available to us, we'll go into a freeze state. There's a bunch of different types of freeze state: high tone freeze, low tone freeze, shutdown, collapse. We won't go into all of that tonight. We'll work with just the idea of freeze. And freeze can be a state where we really begin to check out. We go numb, we can no longer engage or interact, and a lot of the systems of the body sort of reflect this stress state. Digestion goes a bit sideways, sleep can be really impacted, pleasure, intimacy, and connection to other people. So we have these really smoothly built out pathways in our body and our brain, but primarily our body, although we like to think about it, in response to threat. So when you think about fight, flight, and freeze, I wonder which one feels most like your experience when you're feeling stressed or threatened. Do you want to run away? What's a common one that I hear for people in flight response? I'm quitting my job. That's it, I quit. I'm moving, I can't stand my house. There's a lot of response about wanting to escape. Fight response, irritation, annoyance, and anger. Really hate listening to the news. I'm gonna slam my laptop down. I'm not gonna slam your laptop down. I'm gonna slam my laptop down. I feel tension in my jaw. I feel tension in my arms and my legs. Boy, I'm getting a lot of migraines lately. Is it the Chinook? Is it the weather? It starts to show up physiologically. And then free state is detachment. I can't think, I can't speak, and I can't really feel very adequately emotional states. So just kind of reflect a little bit kind of on where you land. And I would venture a guess, although I won't ask this, but you could reflect on this in your own body. The people who live in more of the sympathetic charge of fight response, we probably like to track the news because we like to know what we're up against. And for those of us in the room that need to turn the news off lately because it makes us feel stressed, you might land a little bit more in the freeze state or the flight state. I was kind of reflecting. So the nervous system, the central nervous system, from the brain, from the body, through the central cord of the spine, spreading itself out, innervating our eyes, the muscles of our middle ear, our jaw, our tongue, our laryngeal diaphragm, epiglottis, influencing the nervous system of the heart, our heart rate, influencing all of our organs, including our digestive system and our reproductive system. This nervous system doesn't really care about what we think. It's not oriented to thought. So this is why I always say to people, we can't think our way out of these processes. In fact, when we're thinking about it a lot, it might feel successful, but generally we're bypassing what the body needs to do. So tonight I'd like to do a little bit of practice in the body and get a sense of what might be helpful for you so that you can leave tonight with some tools now to address where you think you land in that pattern of fight, flight, and freeze. Tools, the body. Nothing, we won't be doing like push-ups or anything. This is a little too wet. And there will be a question period at the end too for everybody. One state that I didn't mention that I should probably spend more time with actually now that I'm thinking about it is the safe and social state, or the rest and connected state, or my term for it is embodied presence. And that's the state where our body function is working for us. We can sleep when we need to sleep. We can eat and digest our food when we need to eat and digest our food. We can connect with other people and feel safe. We can problem solve. We're creative thinkers. That pathway is where we're trying to get to, but it can be difficult to stay in during times of stress. When we're in a safe and social state or an embodied presence state, what happens is we're able to move into fight, flight, or freeze when it's needed and necessary, and then fluidly find ourselves back in a connected state. So you might reflect on some time right now. Has there been a time recently where you felt rested, connected, curious, centered? Has that been available for you lately? And if it has, reflect a little bit on how that felt in your body. How did your body tell you that? And if it hasn't, don't worry, you're not alone. What does it feel like to be safe and social? What does it actually feel like in the body to be connected to another person? Okay. So let's do a little body practice. Are you ready? Do you want to? No is celebrated. You most certainly don't have to. But I'd like to invite a practice about centering, which probably many of you have done if you are a meditation or sit practitioner. I like to offer a centering practice as opposed to a grounding practice because some of us need to be upright during these times and some of us want to lay down. But let's do a little bit of a centering practice if you want to find an embodied center. So you'll just come to the edge of your chair. You want a little space behind you. Who can use feeling a little more centered these days? We're all tipped a little off balance. So you're invited to start right here and just noticing the center line of your body, your spine, the top of your head where your sit bones meet the chair. And you might even take some time to imagine breathing up and down the central channel of the body, if that's your practice or worldview. Good, and as we're just beginning this practice, I want to gently introduce, can you sense into your stress state? You know, that first guiding question. What is my stress state right now in this moment? Maybe some of you are like, I don't feel a lot of stress right at this moment. It's starting to feel pretty good. And you'll leave that aside, and then we're going to just tip our bodies forward ever so slightly. You're just going to tip forward just until you feel something in your body turn on to stop you from going too far. So noticing that muscular activation maybe in your core or your legs. And then inviting your body to come back nice and slow, just until you notice that tension isn't working so hard anymore. You might do that just a few more times. The body and the mind love repetition to learn something. You might tip yourself forward again. This is what it feels like when I come off center. Oh, and look, my abdominals or maybe my shoulders or jaw engage or grow tense so I don't fall. And then you're just going to come back to center. And notice if you can let go of whatever engaged to stop you from going too far. Let's notice your breathing, orienting to when something changes. And then you might, when you feel ready and more in your center again, maybe you want to tip back a little bit. Maybe you want to go back. Oh, notice just when something starts to engage in your body to stop you from falling all the way back. Can you feel that? Something tenses up. Okay, there's the tension. And then staying with the tension in the body, you just come back to center and notice when the tension gets to release or dissolve. You might try that again. You're just going to let yourself go back. Something engages, something happens there. Oh, look at how my body stops me from just falling backwards into my chair. And I'm going to come back to center and notice if I can let that go. Yeah, I can see some breath in the room shift after that. If your breath just shifted, notice your breathing shift. That's a sign of down-regulating a stress response potentially in your body. Yeah, so what if you, from your center now, took yourself to the left or the right? Just take yourself to one direction and notice what turns on in your body to stop you from falling all the way over. And then as you come back, you might feel that release or change. You could keep going the one direction. You might be ready to go the other direction. Notice that you don't have to think about how to do this. Your body just knows. This is really what we mean when we talk about the wisdom of the body. It sounds like something so distant and hard to get to, and this is the wisdom of your body. It knows how to stop and engage to stop you from falling over, and it knows how to let go when you come back to center, to something easier. Small miracles in the body. Okay, so you found a little bit more of a center. You've noticed when things engage and turn into a bit of a eustress response potentially, and when you can come away from that and find something centered. Nothing's totally fallen apart. Your body knows how to do this. This is a great practice for those moments when you feel off center, emotionally, physiologically, nervous system wise. The majority of somatic practices are profound in their simplicity. We're talking to the level of the nervous system in the body. On one hand, it's complicated, and on the other hand, it's not. So here's your center. So what now if we did a bit of a movement where we roll our spine around and did it in a way that felt good? Maybe you arch and release, maybe your head wants to roll. It's entirely up to you. Is there a way that you can make this movement so that it feels really good? Like you're meeting tension in your body that you didn't even really know you had until you started making this movement. Yeah, you might even imagine that you're breaking up your stress responses a little bit, stirring them up just a little bit so they don't feel so intractable sometimes. And then when you're ready, finding your center again, noticing if you can more spontaneously come back to something that's holding you up. Get some nice breaths out there. Those spontaneous breaths are such a beautiful sign of coming into emotional regulation, embodied regulation. So if you're noticing that, give yourself some time to really be with it. If you're like, I'm not feeling regulated, I still feel stressed, don't worry, I've got more practices. So the questions that I have on the sheet, if you wish to take it home, the third one is my stress helpful to me at this moment? Is my stress helpful to me at this moment? So what if we even start to consider that stress responses, fight, flight, or freeze, can be helpful? And how do we know when they're helpful? A helpful stress response is something that arises, discharges something in your system, and then goes away. An unconscious helpful stress response is you're at a ball game or a hockey game outside, and a ball or a puck comes to you, and your hand reaches up and catches it, and you don't even have to think about it. And then you bring the ball down, and then you have an emotion. Oh, I can't believe that just happened. And then you have a story. You wouldn't believe what happened to me at the ball game. A helpful stress response is kind of that pattern. It arises quickly. There's an emotional charge to it, or an emotional understanding of it, feeling state. That discharges, and then we connect with someone again. Maybe we talk about what happened, and then we come back to our center. That's an example of a healthy, helpful stress response. Maybe some of you are thinking like, I would never get my hand up in time and the ball would hit me in the head. That's happened to me too. An unhelpful stress response. The ball's coming, our hand goes up, we catch it. We have an emotion or we don't have an emotion, we freeze up. We can't let go of the ball. We go home that night, we can't believe what happened. Maybe we're angry that happened at all. We're having nightmares about the ball coming to us. Our body's feeling tense now because it wonders if there's balls coming from every direction. Unhelpful stress response. So your stress responses aren't inherently bad. They're trying to help us, but sometimes they get a little stuck. You might reflect on that a little bit. So when I am stressed, how do I know it? And is this a helpful moment? Sometimes those three questions are enough for people's nervous systems to reorient to safety. It's almost like your nervous system says, oh, to the brain, you're paying attention to me. You're the adults here. So those three questions. What is my stress state? How do I know? And is it helpful? If my stress is not helpful, what can I do? What can we do? So far tonight, we've practiced resourcing with the chair. On the page, we've practiced orienting to our surroundings, and we've practiced centering. Which of those have been helpful for you? Maybe none, maybe one, or maybe all. So now you have some tools, if they were helpful, that you can start to back pocket and use a little bit often. So when we find tools tonight that are helpful for us, we're not waiting until the ball's at our head. We're practicing them a little bit and often to create that pathway out. We're not practicing for an hour every day. That's too much. It'll be stressful to try to remember that. But a little bit and often every day. All right, let's do a little wave again. Shall we ride the waves together? Uh-oh, someone's talking about the news. Inhale, lift. You're at the top, and then it's a slow coming down. How do I get back down to resource, safe, and social? Okay, inhale. Oh, it's icy outside. I know how to do this. I'm in my body. I can drive. Nice. Inhale, lift. That thing at work felt like a lot, and yet my body knows how to come back down with an exhale. One more time, I'm gonna ride this wave, 2025, and then I'm gonna come back to self, community, and resilience. Yeah, give your shoulders a little wiggle. Where do fight, flight really show up? Shoulders. I didn't put this one on here, but you're also good at this. Let's do a little, something I'll call harmonizing the inner orchestra. Let's harmonize our inner orchestras now. I did put something on the page about, or I really hope I did, a movement practice crossing the midline, which is butterfly tapping or like sweeping. We'll do that too, but let's do a different one that'll just increase a bit of neural coherence, like brain coherence. When we start to cross over the midline of the body and we kind of confuse our brain, it ends up, for some people, down-regulating a stress response, and for other people, it just builds more pathway. So I like to start with my hands crossed and my palms open, and then it's an inhale up again, and then it's an exhale down. And you flip your hands, and you might do that again, almost. Okay, if you're a music person, you're like, this is not at all how you conduct an orchestra, but if you're not a musical person, just fly with me, and we'll just imagine you're conducting your nervous system, and you're bringing it back into coherence and fluidity. Inhale again. Yeah. Can you do this in a way that feels really good? Do your shoulders and arms want to do it bigger? That could be a no, maybe if you have a shoulder thing. What happens if you bring it a little smaller? Notice how some of you are unconsciously timing yourself because of the person beside you. Look at that connection. Maybe it wants to be really tiny. Maybe it's just your fingers. And then a rest, especially when you start to feel tired. Yeah. Let the chair support you again. If you choose to feel the chair supporting your body again, is anything different in your sensation of being on the chair?
Lighter.
Lighter. Wow. Love it. Does it feel, for some of us, like there's more of your body touching the chair now? Yeah. Does it feel like you can actually even receive the support of the chair just a little bit more with your body now? Welcome. This is what we're talking about, embodiment. Here's the gift. We're just more present in our body state now, in a comfortable way, supported way. If you're not, don't worry. Don't worry. We have other things to do. And it might not be what your body might not need to feel the support of the chair, but for those of you who have it, you might really feel it. Yeah, and sometimes we might even reflect like how hard it is for us to receive support. That even receiving neutral support from the chair can feel like a bit of a challenge in these hyper-independent times. Yes.
I'm curious, what's your take on fawn or fawning as one of those nervous system responses?
Yeah, the fawn response, great question. You'll hear different systems and different modalities talk about it in different ways, like that appeasement. Please and appeasement is different than fawn. For my purposes, somatic purposes, fawn is a single response, a somatic response, and it is a combination of flight, fight, high tone freeze, low tone freeze, shutdown, collapse, all at the same time. So it's a more complicated nervous system response because it's adapting to a more complicated human vehicle and a more complicated human life.
So you don't make that decision in the moment. Like if there was a lion, I'm a deer and I'm in the grass and I'm eating and I see the lion, but I'm scared of it, it's gonna kill me. I wanna run, it's gonna kill me.
Right.
I gotta fight it or just freeze, but that's also, the fawn is you're saying it's a combination in that moment. So I'll appease it, okay, you can come and eat me.
Right.
I'll lie down.
Right, and we'll only really see fawn response in domesticated animals like dogs fawn, horses fawn, domesticated cows fawn. We don't really see fawn response in the wild, but we do see fawn response in humans because it is a real human response for us. So fawn response, great question.
It's like your spouse or your boss is, okay, just to get along, I'll do it, but I don't really want to do it. I'm too afraid to fight.
I can't fight, I can't run away, I can't shut down and freeze, I can't totally dissociate right now, I have to show up in a way that won't kill me. So there's a somatic response to fawn. Fawn response in a lot of cases, I don't want to say all the time, but in a lot of cases is in response to hierarchy. When there's a perception of threat and someone's above me and I'm below, and I now need to sort of meet this person who, for whatever reason, I perceive as being something bigger than I am, better than I am, more powerful, more access to social capital, more access to safety, or whatever it is. So fawn response has a really, really unique somatic pattern for everybody, but particularly I would see this one more in female-bodied people or women, and it looks like this. Oh, okay, yeah, sure, no, that sounds really good, no problem, yeah, okay, I can take on that, sure, no problem, yeah. What are the somatic cues of fawn response? Vocal prosody goes up, I'm not a threat. The neck turns to expose the jugular, you can attack me if you needed to, I'm not gonna fight. Eyes go bigger and start to horizontally orient, how do I get out of here? Spine goes into flexion, I might need to run. Palms might be open, I'm not a threat to you. Body might be crossed, I might need to protect. Back up, yeah, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds great, sure, all right. Not a lot of direct orientation. None of these responses are by choice, generally speaking, particularly fawn at all. These are unconscious choices, just like catching that baseball. It's the same action in the body. So what's a cue indicator of fawn response? You want to know the biggest indicator that someone's come out of fawn? They go through all the stages. They've gotten away, and then they start to feel mad, and then they're really confused. So confusion is a key indicator of fawn response.
Would that be required for your childhood programming?
Potentially, yes, if it was demonstrated or if that's what saved our life, absolutely, yeah. It's often like a key piece of where women and female-bodied people frequently internalize, and we think it's our fault. Like, I did something wrong when I went into that response. Why didn't I tell that guy off? And I never, we get mad, right? But it's such an instantaneous, confusing, all over the nervous system response. That's really a key, Harold, is that we're confused. But also for men and male-bodied people too, when they go into fawn. It tends to look less like this for men and male-bodied people though. And it tends to be a little bit more like, yeah, and a lot of agreeing, but looking down, yep. Yeah, and hands tend to connect to the body. Yeah, yeah, I'll take on that extra project. Oh, sure, I'll let my boss actually take, credit for the work that I did. We see it in hierarchical spaces for men, but it's more internalized, pointed down, and kind of inward towards the body. Yeah, great question.
Thank you. Never heard put that way. Thank you. That was a perfect explanation.
You're welcome. Oh, I could talk about fawn response all day, and there's practices to intervene with fawn too, but we'll ride that wave another night. Notice what you feel in your body. Yeah.
Because I think that was a very good question, and it raised a very good. I didn't realize that it's all responses at the same time. But now that, and now that I think of it, I think I myself is mostly that. It's not generally a plain, simple fight, flight, freeze.
Yeah.
It's usually a combination of all of this, maybe in split seconds after the other, or all at the same time. So
absolutely.
we can share some more tools around
Sure.
that.
Yeah, let's,
I don't know what's
I
in
even
it.
have one in here, and I like this one practice, the tremor practice for flight, fright, freeze, and fawn. It can be a real good one for people, but I'm glad that you asked that question, because you're right, none of these responses are really this cut and dry. But when we're learning about them or I'm teaching them, we're starting to break them apart. Like, we're just starting to like tease this big knot of the nervous system responses apart, so people can start to get a finger on like, yeah, flight really is kind of my bag. Like, I move all the time and I'm up and flighty, you know, it's hard for me to anchor my thoughts. Or fight, for some people, like, yeah, I go into fight response. I tend to feel a bit angry, annoyed, and irritated easily. Or some people might pull apart and have a baseline of like more of a freeze state. Like, yeah, I need to shut down and close off. My hands are cold, my feet are cold, my digestion's kind of cold, that kind of thing. But it is much more complicated and blended than that.
So it just takes time to be self-aware, then you can do the self-regulation.
Yep. What is this? What is my body trying to do? I'm going to do more of it, just a little bit. And then I'll see if anything changes or settles in my nervous system. So what we're not doing is trying to get on top of anything that feels uncomfortable and push it away. You're good at that already. Like, we do that all day long, right? Fawn response is all about that. What we're trying to do in somatics is actually make friends with these responses, like love them even. I know it's a big ask, I get it. But we're trying to actually love these body responses because they've saved our lives many, many times. But what we want to do is start to turn down the volume, the stress volume, so that we don't feel like we're catching balls all the time, that we can do it when we need to, and then track when we come out of it, and then we can rest again. What a wild thought, our bodies aren't working against us, they're actually telling us the truth all the time.
So if you see a TikTok video of one of us on the streets doing this,
If I was on TikTok and saw a TikTok video, I would love it. Yeah, and like the movements too, like I'm a big fan of like normalizing the movements and talking about what you notice about your body, because it starts to create this whole other somatic literacy piece for everybody. We start to actually be in our bodies again. I don't know what time we're at. Great time. Let's do another practice and then we'll do questions. Does that sound good? Okay, so we'll do 2 practices. We'll do another cross practice. So butterfly tapping is this one. Yeah, it's a good one. Some people really like this one. You're finding a little coherence. We're kind of confusing our brain in a helpful way by tracking one tap and the other tap. And a lot of the practices that, you know, some people will really love one practice and other people will be like, not my medicine. If it's not your medicine, chuck it up. Pick it up again later. Maybe not now, maybe not ever.
So if you're feeling some kind of stress or irritation, do this.
You can try this, absolutely.
Okay.
And
yeah, try it.
yeah, track this and try to get a bit of a rhythm, because stress takes us out of rhythm. Yeah, activation takes us out of like coherence. The body systems, the symphony of the body systems start to go a bit wonky. So this can be a nice one just to encourage rhythm. Some people do this and it's kind of a nothing for them. They're like, oh, my mind doesn't stay. So then what I like to do for that is to keep your hands crossed on your thighs and you push down your thighs and then flick. And a flick. Yeah, some people back pocket butterfly hug, and some people might give a little thigh push. Good. And then you dust off your hands, confuse your brain, and then switch the other way. Oh, this one can be really nice for that 2 p.m. Should I have another coffee to get through this day? You know, we're so used to that when we start to come down in our nervous system that we actually caffeinate instead of rest. You know, we don't really live in a culture that allows us to nap or rest in the midday. But this can be a real nice one to sort of re-energize without needing another coffee, maybe. Or have the coffee if you want, so flick, and then a dust. And notice how you feel.
To me, the butterfly is like, we can't pat us out on the back. But to me, it's like my inner child, I'm calming my inner child.
Yeah.
You know, like you pat your child, or child, that's okay,
Yeah.
it's okay, that's what I think.
Yeah. That's so beautiful, like it's like tapping your inner child. And if you even think about this movement or motion, like even like this, right, even over your heart, and you might have done this to someone at some point in time. And what else do we do when someone's upset or a child? Shh, shh. So what are we mimicking when we make a movement like this and make that sound? Theory time, just my theory. Don't quote me on this. This is Stacey theory. We're mimicking the mother's heartbeat in utero. And the sound is a mimic of embryonic fluid. Oh, I saw some big breaths up there. What's that? They'll do this a lot in EMDR. Yeah, butterfly tapping. Yeah. You know, it's the intention really behind it. Like especially for EMDR, for calming, but this doesn't calm everybody, and to sort of start getting that bilateral stimulation. But my intention and purpose for it is actually encouraging rhythmicity and coherence through touch. So it's really about intention, I would say. Okay. So, okay, just 2 more practices, I promise, and then we'll do questions. I see some people doing this right now. Do you happen to carry stress in your shoulders, your neck, your jaw, or your back? Like all of us are like, yeah, that's what we do. So here's a practice I like to do. The term for it is pandiculation, but what I like to do is call it hugging the point of stress, hugging the stress point in the body. Some of us have one big stress point, some of us are like, I have multiple stress points, tension points in the system. Just choose one, maybe in your shoulder, your back. I don't think I've met a person yet who doesn't have like something, right? Choose one. And then what the invitation is to slowly slide maybe the shoulder up or the shoulder blade back, or let the head tip. And then just imagine that you're taking the rest of your body and you're kind of giving that point of tension a hug. So you're gonna hold the tension a little tighter. And then when you've wrapped yourself around that tension, breathe a little bit. Notice if you've held your breath, because this is maybe something new. So just invite yourself to breathe. If inner language is your thing, you might tell that little point of tension or stress, like, I am with you. And then nice and slow, you just begin to let the body dissolve away from that hug. And you let that tension point do what it needs to do. And you just come back to something more neutral, nice and small. Take some time here to notice that side, that shoulder, if you moved a shoulder compared to the other shoulder before you do the other shoulder. Let your brain track when something changes, feels neutral, feels good, or feels better. And then if it feels unbalanced, you just go to the other side. Maybe you want to lift that other shoulder up, let that head tip back or in, nice and slow. And it's like you're wrapping the rest of your body around that part that's just feeling tight. You're giving it some support. Nothing should hurt. Take a couple of breaths. Send it a message of I am with you. Notice if that other shoulder wants to pop up and try to help out. Let it rest. And then when you're ready, just imagine dissolving it all away, coming back to neutral. And just a rest here, noticing one shoulder, neck, or back compared to the other. Has anything shifted or changed? Yes.
Raising the shoulder where you're putting your head to?
Sure.
Not this one.
Sure. Yeah.
So the tension is on this side?
Yeah.
Or on this side?
Yeah. That's a great question about pandiculation. So as someone who was a yoga teacher for like 20 plus years, I taught a lot of stretching. And now as a somaticist embodiment person, I'm actually teaching more pandiculation, which is taking the tissue of the body towards something that feels uncomfortable or tight and giving it a little bit of a hug or a squeeze. Giving the muscle a chance to feel supported or slack, and then slowly coming back to something more neutral. So this is called pandiculation. It's what our pets are doing all the time. We say our pets are stretching, but our pets are actually taking their muscles and squeezing them, and then slowly bringing them back to a functional length neutral. Yeah, game changer. We do a lot of pandiculation for chronic pain for people. Chronic pain issues, as opposed to stretching or numbing out the tissue. and bring it together to re-educate it.
I just have another experience here. I'm feeling the stress on this side, not this side.
Yeah, you might go back to that side that feels the stretch, you mean?
The stretch, yeah.
We're really conditioned now, especially for those of us who have had a really brilliant yoga or stretch practice, to always notice pull or lengthening. So the invitation is to start to rewire into noticing squeeze. And it's not that the stretching is bad per se, but it tends to numb. And in some people's physiology, it's more of a stress response, or it builds back more of a survival response than actual pandiculation of the muscle. It's actually a big thing that I go into with a lot of people. Come to one of my workshops sometime, and I really teach a lot about how to do it. Yeah. For embodiment. You might even notice just how your shoulders are feeling. Okay, you want to do one more before questions? Just one more? Okay. So therapeutic tremor. It's different than something like TRE, if you're familiar, which is trauma release exercises. And that's a whole other separate thing. I don't know if any of you have heard of that. This is the idea of inviting the system to actually pandiculate again and feel a little bit of charge or vibration just for like 30 seconds, and then noticing how the body can come out. So for particularly if you feel freezy, like, I don't know what to do. If you feel fighty, like my boss, or if you feel flighty, I'm quitting my job. This is a good one that can kind of meet each one of those, and I really like it. So what you might do is come into your legs again. You might come onto your tippy toes and just squeeze and roll your thighs in together. Nothing should hurt though. If anything hurts, back away. And just give yourself this squeeze. Your glutes might activate, the inner outer thigh might activate, your calf muscles might activate, and just squeeze until you get a sense of like shake. And it could be a little feather of shake, or it could feel like there's quite a bit of shake maybe in the muscles. Some people will feel it in their hands, even though they're squeezing their legs. Just notice if there's anywhere that's kind of grip. Notice if your jaw's gripping. And then don't let go of it quick, real slow. Feel it melt away. And then rest just a bit. I call it a scoop of nothing, just a scoop of nothing. So therapeutic tremor can be really helpful for fawn. After coming out of fawn, like I did it again, I agreed to do a project at work, why did I do that? Fight, flight, or freeze. Therapeutic tremor. And the bigger muscles of the body really kind of like it, for some. So I hope some of these techniques tonight and some of the knowledge tonight allow some or all of us in the room to have some pathway in now to riding the waves of stress. We're not bypassing them, we're not telling them that they're bad. We're actually going to invite them to kind of be charged, and then we're going to track how to come out of it to something more regulated. I hope you have some tools now for the next time you do or don't look at the news. It's crazy.
I just had a thought of it, no, but I think it's where you meant. The team's doing great, do the wave. When the opposition's course, everybody should like this.
That's right. That's a great connection that when you do waves and like team sport, it's probably happening at that unmentioned hockey game right now.
I don't think it'll catch on, but yeah.
Let's try. Let's just try. We used to, go for a jog, stand at the red light, do some like conducting the inner orchestra, waving at people. Hi. Yes.
About an emotional response, like something like crying, does that fall anywhere? Because that's the release of the tension from the response, or does it fall in a particular place?
That's a great question about emotions. I will, yeah, I'll repeat the question so it's on the recording. So the question is about emotional responses being maybe a release of a stress state. I would say absolutely. We didn't do a ton of emotional responses tonight just because we don't have time. But in somatics, we really look at these 3 levels of language in the body. And what I do in my work is create somatic literacy for people, like what is the body doing, what does it need? Our first language is sensation. Our very first language is we were born with just alive with sensation. Am I hungry? Am I cold? Am I connected? Am I alone? Am I tired? Am I awake? And then from those responses, we developed emotions. So now my emotion is my ability to meet my need I'm getting more complicated and now expressing emotions to get my somatic needs met. Are they met or are they not met? Am I left to be alone with the emotion? Is it acceptable and met? And then from there we develop mind and thought and language. So what's happened for us is that we've all become very, very good thinkers. In fact, we're expert thinkers now. We're the ones built our whole world around us. Over the last 20, maybe 30 years or so, there's been more nuanced understanding of emotional states. Like, what is an emotion? What does it do in the brain? What's the neuroscience behind emotions? Lots of nonviolent communication processes about what's the need, what does the emotion need? And now in somatics, we're inviting people to come back to that original sensation. What is the sensation that drives the emotional need? So yeah, when we're starting to go into sensations, emotions are definitely invited to come to become part of the coherence process. And they can be surprising sometimes. We can do therapeutic tremor, and there can be laughing, or there can be crying, or there can be anger. Yeah, in the work that I do with somatics, we're mostly interested in the sensations, emotions, and then like resulting sort of lotus flower thought, felt sense. And what I don't work with people is traumatic incidents. Like, I'm not starting with like, tell me about the very worst point in your life. If it's resolved, you're great. If it's unresolved, it's still riding some sort of response in your body. So we don't need to consistently go back to the thought of it or the memory of it. We can actually start to meet it in the body without even having to talk about it. It's a beautiful process. Yeah, emotions are part of this. Everyone's going, imagine that. You don't have to talk about that thing one more time.
Does somatic yoga teach this one step further because you're combining the movement with that working with the emotion, or is that something?
It can, yeah, it really can. I myself don't teach somatic yoga anymore, although I was a yoga teacher an asana teacher for a long time. I do teach somatic movement classes where we are exploring, like I do a whole course series on anxiety and depression from the embodied state and the emotional responses. And that's a lot of practice of actually what we were doing tonight, like what's flight, what's fight, what's freeze, what's fawn in my body, and how do I know? And then I do all sorts of different explorations with people somatically, but I wouldn't call it yoga at this point in time.
Good question. So, as you mentioned, the encouragement here is that we do these more often, slowly, little bit by little bit. So, is sort of the goal that when you get faced with that situation, you know how to regulate yourself immediately in that spur second? Like we do these exercises, we do all of this outside that situation.
Right.
So how is it supposed to, or how will it help us when we are in that situation?
That's a great question. So like, what is the point of all of this to doing the experts? Like, how does this actually help us, right?
Yeah.
So what we really like to do, and what our brain wants us to think, is if I have tools, then I'll know exactly what to do in those big moments. But I'm going to dump that toolbox out and tell you, you're not going to know what to do in those moments because our brain turns off when we're in these flight responses. We actually don't have access to tools if we're in freeze, especially. Our brain goes into survival mode. It doesn't go into tool or problem solving mode. But if you find practices that allow you to feel more settled, more connected, even just a little better, maybe relaxed if it's helpful for you, now you're creating, in essence, like muscle memory through your nervous system. You're creating more pathway to feeling settled, connected, and curious, embodied, so that when something pops up, you don't have to think about it. Your body will go into it, and then it knows how to come back out. And then afterwards you go, you know what, Stacey? This is what I hear. You know what? Like, I got a fight with my husband again, but then we were good at the end of it, and I shook it off when we came to a resolution, and my shoulders aren't so tight anymore. It ends up being more of a spontaneous response.
Okay.
A fluid, spontaneous response, as opposed to learning another tool, trick, or technique.
You can also do them before you go in, if you know you're going into the situation.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, always use them, especially when you know, like, I'm gonna go into a flight response. I'm outside my mom's house like this.
Yeah.
She's gonna watch this video and go, "Stacey." I do it at your house too, but Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. That's a great one. Those ones are going to be more interventional when we're doing them to try to stay regulated in stressful experiences. But I can't emphasize enough that if you found any one of these things helpful tonight, if you do a little bit of it and often, like titrate the experience into your nervous system back to safety, it will begin to respond with more fluidity and ease. You won't, in fact, we don't even notice it when we're more embodied. We're more present and regulated. You're welcome. Great question. I maybe should have written that on the paper.
Just want to, in response to your question, I've always wanted like perfection right now.
Yeah.
It's progress over perfection.
Yeah.
It's like 1% better every day. And then at the end of the day, we have a to-do list, but have a to-do list. But go back to the end of the day, okay, I had these responses, these are my old responses, but no, I switched these today. Then you build up momentum daily. Oh my God, it's like lines on a calendar kind of thing. And you can, I'm a visual guy, so I want to see my progress.
Yeah.
Sometimes I forget that I've come so far, but so that by just doing it pretty visually, that today, at the end of the day, my ta-da list, I did these things. Then my normal response, 2 columns, and here's my response now, and that just helps me build on it.
Yeah.
And be kind with myself.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to do that.
Yeah.
Especially when you've been subjected to not that.
Yeah, it is a rewiring, it's a repatterning for sure. One of the best ways that people tend, if their life allows for it, to know when they are more emotionally regulated is it's actually reflected to you from outside. That someone will actually say to you like, hey, I've noticed this thing about you, like, because we're not wired to notice it about ourselves. And in fact, we're deeply relational creatures. We need other people to be healthy. That's a part of our mental, emotional, physical health. The spiritual health is each other, right? So we need other people, and a lot of the reasons why things got so disrupted in our nervous systems, either stress, toxic stress, or trauma states, is because someone wasn't there. Or the people who were there weren't helpful or attuned to us. So when we start to regulate, it's usually someone outside of us who reflects that back, who says like, wow, you know what I really noticed? There's this thing about you lately.
I have a question. How do you get out of your brain? In theory, I know it. I know I used to try to go back to the body, and I try, but the brain constantly, what should I feel now? Do I feel that? No, I don't feel that. It's wrong. It's just, this turns me nuts. I just wonder, is there anything that you can do to get it off the brain, I guess?
Yeah, like how to get,
Thinking, or-
would you say that what you're experiencing is sort of like circular ruminating thoughts that just kind of go around and around?
Well, I just think everything it has to be dealt with in my head rather than my body, even though in theory I know perfectly if you should be in the body and you should be.
Right.
But you always say, you said, well, how do you feel after that? Then my brain right away, oh, what should I feel, or what do I have to feel? And I don't really feel it. I don't know how to answer that question.
That takes practice too, because some of us are what we consider close processors versus distant processors. And it is a little simplistic and linear, but this might help explain why for some people they're able to interocept and understand things, and why other people are more cognitive and in their thought process. So close processors are someone who I can say to them, hey, what do you notice right now? And they might go, my mouth is dry, I'm probably dehydrated, I should have something to drink. They've actually resourced their somatic felt body state, and it gave them data. A distant processor might do this. If I say, hey, what are you noticing right now? They might go, it's been about 3 hours since I had something to drink. I'm probably dehydrated. I should probably have some water. Like they cognitize and maybe look outside of their body to gain the data, that the internal sensations aren't their first pathway. So for distant processors, mindfulness is a really, really helpful tool, because what it does is it starts to build interoception into the system slowly, little ta-da moments instead of to-do moments. We start coming back to this, and some of those practices really are, what's the chair underneath me? Because everyone can kind of sense chair, is it helpful? Am I tense, and can I receive it? The floor, and centering. And sometimes even for those thought processes, if we're distant and we want to be cognitive, is I call it throw the brain dog a bone. Like, good brain. We're not trying to get rid of thoughts. So actually give the brain something to think about. What would it feel like if I'm emotionally regulated? How would I know? And I'll let the brain sort of do its thing, like, well, maybe it's this, maybe, good brain. Oh, you're so smart. You're so good at thinking. Thank you for being a part of my process. I wonder how my hand feels on my head right now. Techniques just like that. So we're not trying to get rid of thought. Thought's great. It got us here, right? It's a good thing. But some of us are just more cognitive. So we do slow interoceptive practices. Now for the other person, the closed processor, one's not good and one's not bad. They just are the way we process data, simplistically speaking. Sometimes for closed processors, what happens for them is they're awash in internal interoceptive information. My chest is tight, that feels like anxiety. It reminds me of the time I was 8, I fell off my bike, and it's just so fast inside, like it just comes up so quickly. So for someone like that, we might try to slow things down by actually looking around us. Hey, those kids outside playing on the ice, can we listen to them? How do your hands on your legs kind of feel? Can you sense the chair underneath you? Can you receive support? So there's a few techniques.
There's a way to get out of the brain, but it takes time, like
100%.
a year or 2 years or,
Well,
I don't know.
so yeah, like what's the timeline up? There's your brain again.
No, I
I love it. So let's throw your brain dog a bone. How long does your brain think it might take you?
But that was a tricky question.
Oh, that's it. No, it's a great question. Your brain just did something there. That was really interesting. Your brain just did a thing where it was like, wait a minute, I don't know if I know the answer to that precisely. That's great. Your brain dog just got a bone to chew on. One of the other things that I'm trained in and work with is something called interpersonal neurobiology, which is where we actually look at how the brain and neural states interface with like emotions in the body too. So that's why the little brain dog. Give me a bone. Good dog. Oh, my hand's touching my head.
Thank you.
Can you have both?
Oh yeah, for sure.
You can change depending on the situation.
Can you have both of those processing types? Yeah, and they can change. Like this is the work of Eugene Gendlin, for anybody who's familiar with inner processing. He's a very well understood, like a psychologist, right, from a long time ago. So he sort of developed this idea of close processing versus distant processing. The way that I've built it out is more somatic, but I see it as like more of a circle, especially with neurodivergence. People who are neurodivergent, is that they're actually so awash in internal information that they mask and learn to present themselves as distant processors. Like I don't know anything about the inside of my body, but the minute you start going in, there's actually a lot of information in there for them. So yeah, depends on the day, depends on the year. Great question. Thank you. Yes.
I just want to let you know that two things you just said. I just had an aha moment while you were talking, and this is processing of holy, yeah, it's like, I just now put the biggest piece of my puzzle, you saying the trauma is, part of it is, people weren't there for you. So parents love me, but they weren't able to give me what I needed. So I created my own coping skills. And this is part of my spiritual revolution, to be vulnerable. I don't know any of you, so I'm gonna pull it out. So now it makes sense. And then I grew up isolation, building up walls. That was normal to me. And I had friends, but I didn't let people in. I didn't create community. It wasn't until COVID hit. And I do my own workshop. I've created my own community beyond just Calgary. And so it just makes sense what you just said, those two things. But oh my God, I understand more about myself.
Yes.
Like I've been looking for that peace.
So in these moments, I like to celebrate.
Yeah, it's like, in the last 48 hours,
Yeah.
I had a few other pieces, but this was a huge, and today in fact, 2 pieces, but this was, like it was cute. It just,
Oh, that's a good feeling. So like to
I understand
just
my
give a little
process.
bit to the recording, like just having some aha moments right now, where it's like, wait a minute, something's making sense about, and like, does it feel like for you that it's like, I think I kind of always knew it, but even right now I more understand it?
Yes, I mean, I'm an introvert, extrovert. It depends on the situation, the emotion, where I'm at. But I always thought I was alone on that one, and I realized like isolation is a global pandemic.
Yes.
COVID, no, to me. Isolation is a huge problem. Just because you're in a relationship or family, people are so isolated,
Yeah.
feel isolated. And I grew up with that, and I think that was the only one like that. And then going through life, and more recently, since COVID, oh my God, we're all forced into a home prison. I don't like this. I don't like to be told what to do. But sponsored by the government, so I serendipitously, I was connected with resources and people to help me put together what I put together. And like, oh yeah, community, but when you just said what you said, it clicked.
Embodied cognition.
Can you say what was that pivotal point?
What was the pivotal point?
Like what was the things?
Do you want to share what the two things were?
Pivotal point, like right now?
Yeah,
or-
do you want to share that?
Oh, I don't know exactly how you said it, but with stuff for me, there's trauma, it's nobody was there for you.
Right.
To me, trauma, I go by the Gabor Mate.
Yep.
It's not what happened to you, it's our nervous system didn't know how to handle it.
Yep.
So it's embedded in our body, hence the somatic work. Number two is, I don't have a brain for it.
That's all right. We don't want to be too cognitive about it either when we have these embodied cognitions, honestly. Like if you feel like you're really reaching for it cognitively, let it go.
As human beings, we're a social being, we need, you can heal in need each other, you can heal in isolation, but true healing is impactful in community.
Yep.
As in collective.
100%.
That's why we're here.
True healing is in connection. Yeah, trauma starts because our body does know what to do. It automatically goes into a threat response state to help us survive, but then it gets a little stuck. It doesn't know how to complete because we were alone. And then when we come into connection, things really do get healed. Like when we talk about somatics, like the word somatic means in Latin, like of the body. But when we're talking about somatic experiencing, or somatics as a group, we're talking about the human organism, the entire human organism, emotions, thought, memory, phylogenetic history, epigenetic history. But we're also talking about the collective organism, that our communities have an ecology. We're talking about the organism of your community. And then we're talking about social structure organisms. We're talking about cities and villages. And then we're talking about even bigger organisms, the idea of countries and identity. So when we're talking about somatics, we're talking about the individual experience in every facet of our being in relationship with every other organism simultaneously.
To me, it's like that. I think it's in Colorado, the largest forest, but everything's connected underneath. You look at the individual trees, but underneath the root systems are the same root systems.
That's right. Mycelium, it's the nervous system of the planet. Really fundamentally beautiful. I really want to celebrate this though. And I really want to celebrate it. I do. Like celebration is the antidote to toxic positivity. Celebration is a felt sense in the body that we share together. So I have this thing where I have an imaginary gold cord with a tassel on it right here. And when there's a moment to celebrate, you're invited to feel it through your body. It can be little tingles, ripples, feeling lighter, happy, or just like this lotus bloom in the mind of awareness, right? Like, oh, there's something here, embodied cognition, that's so amazing. So what I like to do is I pull the imaginary cord, this big gold tassel, and confetti comes down, and a big sign flashes that goes, yes, yes, yeah. So let's, pull your cord.
Well,
Just
I know
to,
that- sorry.
so to say, just to recognize our time.
Sure.
Would you like to finish the evening by summarizing and giving us some take-home practices or ideas?
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here tonight, being so open and curious, and for inviting me. You'll notice that there aren't like real specific practices on here because you can invent your own practices. I gave some outlines to like resourcing, looking around you, orientation, a little bit of squeeze. I gave a little bit of a list at the bottom about like if you do a bit of tremoring, therapeutic tremor, if that was helpful for you. Sometimes we overdo it, it can feel a little stuck. So I just gave a couple of points of like what to do if you're like, this really started something for me, just for safety. On the end, I put signs of regulation, and I just put a couple. So you're invited to put your own ways of how you know your nervous system is in regulation. Eyes water, we can make more direct eye contact with people, we have access to celebration and awe in our body, we feel connected safely. When we are regulated and we're curious, we're not opinionated. When we are curious and connected, we see other people as ourselves. When we're dysregulated, we tend to have a lot of opinions and we see those people are like that and I am like this. It's a sign of dysregulation in these times. So invite yourself to even make your own list of how you know you're regulated and connected to other people. So use your own body wisdom after tonight. Whatever worked for you, back pocket it and practice. If you want to find out more about what I do, you can find me at mindfulsomaticwellness.com. There's a website on the bottom. I always forget to bring business cards. I need a business manager or something, someone to remind me of that. But I run workshops and trainings and all sorts of things where we can explore this material at a much deeper level.
You do one-on-one as well?
I do see private clients and we do one-on-one trauma resolution work through the body.
And where do you do this?
My space, Mindful Somatic Wellness, is located on Horton Road. So off of Southland Drive and McLeod Trail. So sort of local, like sort of downtown, but not downtown prices, and there's parking.
Well, you can see why we keep having Stacey come back. But an absolute delight. Such a fluidity of presenting, practical techniques, and your expertise shines in the way you speak. So I think it was just a wonderful presentation. Just if I can make a few closing comments, if I might. March the 6th, Dr. Joan Horton is going to be talking about Strive Part 2. She did a Part 1 a while ago, and Strive stands for Simulating Trauma for Resilience in Various Environments. And so this is going to be a great evening, and it's going to be on March the 6th. March the 9th, we are going to do a one-day meditation and mindfulness retreat called Befriending the Mind. It's going to be done here. It's going to be given by myself and Dr. Leslie Elistad. So this is a wonderful opportunity to deepen your practice in terms of predominantly walking and sitting. But the other key attempt with this practice is to do two things. We meditate, but if you've noticed, it's not so easy to meditate because our minds are always taking us away. Can we learn some valuable strategies to be able to develop focus awareness? And then the other part of the practice is going to be how one can be in relationship with one's experience, which in reality is what mindfulness is all about. The capacity to be open, as Stacey has said, to accept, to allow your experience, but ultimately to act in a skillful way, which really truly is the essence of mindfulness. So have a look at our website. You're all welcome to join us, and I think it will be a valuable opportunity to practice. The last thing is that if you feel that this has been of value for you, that we would appreciate a donation. The speakers are not paid, the organizers are not paid, but we do have lots of expenses: renting the hall, tech support to send out all the notices, Zoom license, meetup license, website license, and those chocolates are very expensive. So if you think that this has been of value, donation of $10 to $20 in the basket back there, or whatever you feel is affordable or valuable for you. So we'd like to thank you for showing up tonight, because without you, this wouldn't happen. So one last request, that lifter, we put about 6 to 8 chairs on them, and then we put them in the back. And there are people here who know what to do, and someone can help organize that. So thank you very much, and Stacey,
Thank you.
what a great pleasure.
Thanks for
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.